Steve Sherlock here for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio, available anywhere, anytime in the internet. Yes, on your browser, WFPR.FM, and in the local Franklin Mass FM radio dial. Yeah, the dial of the band, maybe it's push buttons, knobs, whatever. 102.9 is the number. If you can preset it, make it ready for you anytime, it'll be there. Here today virtually with our state rep, Jeff Roy. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. A little bit hot and steamy out there, but glad to be inside under the air conditioner.
Yes, when the air conditioner is functioning, yes.
Yeah.
Because we could probably box that, humidity if it was boxable and then, have a market later in the year when it's kind of cold.
Wouldn't it be great if in the middle of February you could open a jar of heat from June 2026 and it'll magically warm your bones?
How about that? Yeah. In some world, maybe that'll happen. So while we had just gotten a recent update from you in regards to the legislative process, the budget, et cetera, this session is going to talk about the audit and kind of the discussion that's been out and about, certainly focused on a couple of points. The state auditor, Diane DiGiulio, the attorney general and her response or lack thereof, depending upon points of view, who's saying what. But then the Supreme Judicial Court finally got both parties together last week and seems to have concocted an agreement or at least given them an order, which will expand a little bit, take people along as to, okay, where did this start? How did this happen? And hopefully help people understand what may get resolved relatively soon.
Well, you sound hopeful. I would like to believe that is the case, but this has been going on for quite some time. We're trying to bring some closure to it. And knowing that we were going to talk about this, I actually did prepare a PowerPoint slide deck that goes through the history of transparency and what we are trying to accomplish to accommodate and balance both the public's right to know along with maintaining the constitutional protections and separation of powers between the legislative and executive branch. I'm not sure if folks understand, but the auditor falls under the executive branch of government, and the legislature is its own branch of government. Not to give a civics lesson, but there are three branches of government in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, very similar to the federal system. So you have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, and you have the judicial branch, and they are three independent branches of government. So if this is a good time, I can go underway, and I'd say feel free to stop me for explanations of what's happening. And I think that's probably the easiest way to go through a very complex matter. I think people think it's easy, but it isn't.
Yeah, and I think some of the easiness comes from perhaps a lack of full understanding of the terms being used.
Right.
I mean, we can talk of, it's summertime. Your green grass is growing nicely. My green grass is growing nicely. And for that kind of a conversation, green is green, and that's fine. You can still have it in your mind, perhaps one of the 49,000 or gazillion shades of green. I can have a slightly different one, but that's okay. The conversation still moves along.
Yes.
When somebody in, whether it's an art world, painting, crochet, they want to find a particular match, or if you got a hole in a shirt and you want to patch it, that kind of green then becomes, the color code match specific. And I suspect some of that, audit, okay, there are many kinds of audits. And I think some people have in the mind, well, an audit's an audit, an audit. Well, a rose is a rose is a rose, but there's also varieties of roses and there are varieties of audits. So, yeah, I think you'll take us along, and certainly I'm willing to explore and make sure people can come along because I'll be the proxy, at least, that if I can understand and you can explain it to me, then hopefully people will come along. They may still differ, but hopefully they'll at least have a better understanding.
That's fantastic. And, along the lines of what you just said, I was having a conversation with a constituent last night, and, he was telling me, hey, I just want to know how my tax dollars are being spent by the legislature. I want to know where every penny's going.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean by an audit. I said, okay, I'm with you. We're working on it.
Right.
But let me let's see if I have the share screen skills down, and I'll get this PowerPoint going and hit play. So how did I do? Do I have it up on the screen?
You've passed this initial test. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is so the topic I want to talk about is the architecture of transparency and how the legislature is expanding public access while defending the constitutional separation of powers. Transparency is something that we have been working on for years, and we will continue working on for years to come. And what this is all about. Now, there's a demand for transparency. We heard it loud and clear. I mean, I heard it before the vote in November of 2024, but certainly when 72% of your voters say they want more information, you must respond to that mandate. And we do respond. But on the other hand, we have to, all of us as representatives in the Great and General Court, we took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in addition to the Constitution of the United States of America. And one of those essential characteristics is spelled out on the bottom of this slide, where it says, the freedom of deliberation, speech, and debate is an essential right of the people. And I'll talk more of how that fits in with the separation of powers.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Okay.
the government and our Constitution was designed by John Adams. And in fact, that's a painting that hangs in the House chamber above the rostrum as a constant reminder that, this is a government of laws, not of men. And I draw particular attention to Article 30 in the Declaration of Rights in that Constitution, which says, in the government of this Commonwealth, the legislative department shall never exercise the executive and judicial powers, or either of them. The executive shall never exercise the legislative and judicial powers, or either of them. And third, the judicial shall never exercise the legislative and executive powers, or either of them, to the end it may be a government of laws and of not men. And before the vote took place in November of 2024, there were experts who were called to testify on each of the ballot questions. And the ballot question calling for the audit, we were warned at that time that that particular question was running into some constitutional questions. And some of the expert witnesses, I have their testimony on the side of this slide that says that it's an act of constitutional vandalism that lays waste to the principle of legislative independence. Another said it was an unprecedented transfer of power from the people's representatives into the executive branch, and they warned the power to audit may well turn out to be the power to destroy. And I think it all goes around the question of just what is an audit, as you had described earlier. So the voters resoundingly voted 72% that they wanted an independent and rigorous financial review, and gave the auditor that ability to do that review. Just what the scope of that review is remained unclear. We've been trying to sort that out for a year and a half. But immediately after that vote, in fact, it was in November of 2024, the House voted to change its rules to codify an independent, rigorous financial review in House Rule 85A. Each branch of the government or each chamber has their own rules. So what we said was that our House business manager, who annually requests an audit, we directed her to work with the auditor to get a recommendation on who should be doing the audit. And the state auditor had 30 days to select and recommend a private independent firm from our state's vendor list. These are people who have already been vetted.
Right.
And that she should select who's going to do it, and whoever's going to do this audit has to execute a contract for a strict yellow book standard government audit. That's what she would be directed to do. And then that completed independent audit would be automatically published to the legislator's website. That's what we did in November of 2004. And that law was to take effect in July of 2025. And it did take effect. And each year since then, the auditor receives a letter from the House business manager saying, hey, we want you to audit the books of the House of Representatives, select an audit firm to do it, and we will get the materials there. Unfortunately, the auditor did not want to do an audit in that manner. She believed that the statute or the November 2024 vote gave her some other authority, so she refused to do that process. And those, despite the fact that we sent 2 letters to her, those types of independent audits never took place. Now,
so before you go on, if we
sure.
may, just can you elaborate a little bit on that prior page, that bottom right corner, with some people may not understand that acronym GAGS?
It's a standard. I can't tell you what GAGAS stands for in particular, but it's the outside independent agency that sets the standards for a rigorous audit. You could Google GAGAS and it would tell you, but there are certain types of rules and standards that CPAs have to follow in conducting a standard government audit. And that's what we wanted her to follow.
Yeah, and I think your intent in this case, going back to what you said earlier, was effectively an audit of the process around your financial accounting, particularly regards to the budget. So from what you've approved, they could, spot check and see that there's a document flow and that things in the process thereby generally meet to whatever the guiding principles are.
Exactly. And then in that context, I think it's important that folks know what's out there. Now, the talk on the bottom there says a recent 135-10 bipartisan vote reaffirmed the House's commitment to opening the books. That was the vote on House Rule 85A. So a majority, I would say all of the Democrats and a majority of the Republicans in the House voted to change that rule, to open up the books and to allow the auditor to go in. But again, she chose not to follow that process. And that's when I would say, for lack of a better term, that's when the battle over the issue began. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about what's out and what transparency has existed for decades. People can get vendor payments. Every penny spent from what the legislature buys is searchable by department or vendor. I'm going to give you the actual sites for all that and ways that people can get them.
We'll include that in the show notes so people can follow along for sure, yes.
Yeah, and I'll get a copy of this PowerPoint to you so that you can include this in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
And
Yep. Great.
all of the salaries of the House and Senate people, which accounts for 95% of the operating budget of the House and Senate. That's
Mm-hmm.
available online already. And the annual audits. Contrary to popular belief, the chambers are audited every year, and the results of those audits conducted by independent CPAs are published on the legislature's website, which I will give you those sites.
Right. So
Yes.
to clarify on that, the last point then, so the gap is those last 2 years where you've asked the current auditor to initiate the process based upon your new rules, and she's declined to follow through.
Right.
But without her, prior to that, you had actually done an annual audit with a valid CPA firm.
Absolutely. I've been doing it for as long as I've been in the building.
Okay.
And this is the chat, which you can just hit each of these QR codes. The QR code on the left is the vendor payments.
Sure.
The QR code in the middle is the salaries, and the QR code on the right are all the annual audits conducted for each chamber. And you can just hit those QR codes, and it'll take you right there. So that stuff is there and open to the public.
Yeah. And for the listeners, if by chance you don't have a phone or device that can do that QR code, I will translate that QR code to the legitimate link. So you won't have to use the QR code. If you can, fine. But if you can't, I won't inhibit that. I'll provide the link for you.
Well, Steve, I'm going to make your life a bit easier.
Because you're going to send it to me?
Well, here's the next slide says, here's all the spending. Here's the QR code, and here's the URL for
cool.
that particular website. And on the right side of the screen, it gives you a glimpse of what the total state budget is. That's $61.5 billion, and every expenditure is out there, and you can break it down by certain departments. If you want to see just what the House of Representatives spends, you can do that by going to this website, which is out there.
Great.
You can find all the salaries for all state employees at this particular website. The QR code is there. The URL is down below. And on the right side of the screen gives you a glimpse of what you're looking at. And I purposely put up the House of Representatives site, which their budget is $8.26 million. And you can drill down to every particular representative or senator and find out exactly what they make.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And third, those annual audits. Here's the URL and the QR code, and what you'll see when you click on those links. You can see the audits from 2017 up to 2023. You can see the communication from the House business manager to the auditor asking for them to conduct the audit, and it'll just give you any information that you want to see on how your dollars are being spent by the House of Representatives. And then some other resources. If that's not enough for you,
mm-hmm.
all of the hearings that the committees have conducted with video archives are available at the URL on the top left. And that is all of the testimony provided by witnesses at those hearings, as well as the back and forth between representatives and senators who serve on those committees. So every single hearing is archived.
And just to clarify too, to help add to that, I think, but the hearing in this case, so you propose or somebody else proposes a piece of legislation. In some cases, there may be 3 or 4 different types or different angles on that. Those generally are assigned to a committee. The committee conducts the hearing, and it's these hearings that are the links.
Yes, and you can see every bill. So it's about 7,000 bills are filed each legislative session.
Mm-hmm.
Every single bill gets a hearing, and you can go into this hearings list, and it's broken up by committees, And once you go into the link, you can see the agenda of the bills that were taken at that hearing, and then you can watch the video to see what folks said about those particular bills. Now, on the top right of the screen, you see all of the archived videos from all of our legislative sessions. Every time we're in session, whether it's an informal session or a formal session, those are broadcast live, and you can watch them live. But if you are not available to watch them live, you can go and watch them archived sessions and watch and see the discussions of the actual bills that were out on the floor on any particular day. And they're archived by day, and gives you a great inside look at what happens on the floor. If you're a budget wonk, the link on the bottom left allows you to follow the budget proceedings from the time when the governor puts her budget out before the people, all the way through the process when it goes to the hearings before the House Ways and Means Committee, and then they issue a budget, and then the action that the House takes, that's captured. Then it goes over to the Senate. You see the Senate action, and then you see that there's a conference committee when they have to reconcile both the House and Senate versions of the budget. And then eventually, when that budget is done, you see the final document that is enacted by both branches and signed into law by the governor. You can follow that process at every single stage by going to that particular link.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then finally, on the bottom right is a link to my profile page on the legislature site, and that gives you a glimpse to the committees I serve with, my job title, every single bill that I filed, and you can link from that page. You can link to the actual bill, see the text of the bill, see a description of all of the action that has taken place on that bill, and that's just my profile page. You can find profiles for all 200 legislators on that same site and every single bill that has been filed. And all of this information is out there and available for public scrutiny.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So at this point, at the beginning of this presentation, I had told you how the auditor did not want to comply with the House rule and take the information and submit it to a professional auditor. So the dispute began at that time, and it took about a year and a half before it finally reached the Supreme Judicial Court, which is the highest court in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And the hearing took place on May 6th of 2026. And there, for the first time, the auditor had set out exactly what she was looking for and told the court this is all she wanted. And I have this snippet from that hearing, which is about 2 minutes long, and let me play that for you.
Because the court here could cabin when such an action is appropriate. So this is an unusual case. I think all the parties agree.
Are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared? Is the auditor prepared to limit this to the three issues? Because when you read the correspondence, you keep saying, okay, when we do an audit, we can't be bound by what we start with. So are you prepared to limit this to those three issues which are defined?
Yes, the audit in the correspondence, the record makes clear the auditor has repeatedly said that this case would be about the document requests that were already served in January 2025. And this court just last week.
I'm being more, because I've read through those. They're not the clearest correspondence on earth. Are you telling this court, because we have to issue some kind of order in this case, that all the auditor is seeking is representation from the AG on these three particular audit requests and the authority to proceed on those? Because that will clarify what we have to do.
If so, can you please be even more precise and say exactly which letter you're referring to?
Yes, I'm referring.
So which audit demand letter?
Yes.
Is it the January
January 9th?
January 9th letter?
Yes, the January.
So you're going to confine it to that?
The January 3rd document requests and followed up by the January 6th specific transmittal of the document request. The state auditor has repeated throughout the correspondence, this case simply seeks to enforce those requests.
The January 3rd letter is the one at Appendix 310?
Correct.
That's what you're prepared to confine yourself to right now?
Well, as it was elucidated in the January 6th letter at Appendix 313, correct. That's what this case is about.
So then there's no problem.
So that was a snippet from the hearing. And once the auditor's attorney had identified what she was limiting, you heard one of the justices that got slightly cut off saying, well, there's no problem here. So what the court did the very next day, they issued the order, which is on your screen right now. And I'll direct your attention to subparagraph 3 of that order, where it says the auditor has now limited her request for representation to the defendant's alleged failure to produce. And it talks about the official budgets for the Senate for those years 21 through 24, copies of official audits, a listing of all transaction relating to the Senate's balance forward line item for the years 21 through 24, and a listing of all monetary agreements entered into by the Senate with any current or former employees or members of the Senate during fiscal years 21 through 24. So that's what this was limited to. Again, this case was involving the Senate, but the same rules would apply to the House. So 4 weeks after this court resolved the dispute about what the audit should be, the House passed H 5469, which is an act promoting transparency and public access in state government. And let me share with you what that does. So the legislative audit boundaries have been set, and it authorizes the state auditor to review the administrative functions of the House. And that's the legally mandated distinction separating auditable administration from protected constitutional duties. And any function that's tied to the constitutional privilege of lawmaking is strictly off limits. And that would be, she can't go to a particular representative or senator or speaker or president of the Senate and say, well, I want to know what went through your mind as you were considering a particular bill, or I want to talk about what phone calls you may have had with your constituents, or I want to see all your emails that you may have had, private communications with constituents. That drifts off into the separation of powers arguments. And so now we have boundaries and we have something we can work with. So what are the administrative functions that are in alignment with the Supreme Judicial Court's order? That's the budgets, the adoption of the official budget of either branch or joint operations. The audits, those commissioning and receipts of any official audits, and those are the ones that I showed you on a previous screen. Mm-hmm. The expenditures of appropriated funds, and as we noted earlier, there's about $8 million in appropriated funds by the House. 95% of that is salaries for the employees. And then the fourth piece was the execution of any monetary settlement agreements entered into with a member, officer, or employee. So those are the pieces, and we define those and set those out in a statute. The rules weren't acceptable to the auditor, so this time we put it in statute and did it in perpetuity. It wasn't just for this particular year. The auditor will have the right to do these things as long as that statute is in existence. And the rules of engagement were set.
to clarify, if I may, having read that order as well, I thought there was a clause in there that the Attorney General then had some time period in order to respond to the auditor saying, yes, these are valid, this is what we'll allow, et cetera, based upon your request. While that, I think, is still a question out, it seems like you've assumed that that will be indeed valid without the Attorney General review and already kind of codified it. Is that
the language, the language addressing the Attorney General in that court order was whether or not the Attorney General was going to represent the auditor moving forward in this dispute, or whether the auditor could engage her own counsel. And a few days after that court hearing, the auditor said, the Attorney General said, you, auditor, can select your own counsel and, retain independent counsel. I'm not going to represent you. And that's how she ended up with Attorney Liz Reardon to represent her. So that's what that particular piece was with the attorney.
I missed that somewhere in the but thanks for that clarification. Good.
Sure.
Yes.
So then this is the rules of engagement, which we set out in the statute. That she has to make a request in writing to the presiding officer of the House. It's limited to the 4 record types defined by the SJC. We, as a House, must provide the records or explain in writing why they're unavailable, or identify a specific constitutional or statutory basis for denial. And then if she wants to interview people, then she has to notice the person who she wants to interview, the subject matter, and the specific administrative function that she wants to talk about. And then there's a response option for the House there. And then aside from all of the audit pieces that we did in that bill, we went further in opening up previously exempt branches to public records requests. We completely unlocked the governor's office and made the governor's office subject to the existing public records law for the first time in state history. And then we unlocked the legislature, but we had to create a whole new statutory public records requirement and process specifically tailored to that branch, so that we could protect, communications between legislators and constituents or witnesses. Oftentimes in my role, I have to deal with constituents who are handling very private matters. It could be a mental health issue, it could be a healthcare issue, unemployment issue, very private communications that we did not want to make subject to public records disclosure. So it's very similar to the public records law with a few exceptions. And that
from a prior experience in the corporate environment, privacy and information protection, that makes sense. And the audit piece should at least be still enabling around kind of the process. So there was a contact, you replied, they're satisfied, things of that sort, as opposed to without getting into the details of what it was, because then that's going too far.
And then these are the areas that we delineated for public legislative records. And it should be known and understood that the ACLU, Common Cause, and other public groups that promote transparency and have been pushing for this type of change were on board and supportive of exactly what the House did on its public records changes. Mm-hmm. And so we establish a constitutional and judicial avenue for public records dispute. We have the request from a citizen. We have a designated legislative records access officer. That'll be LRAO in future slides, and they will coordinate the official response. And the citizen, if they are not happy with the response, they have a right to petition the Supreme Judicial Court. They don't have to go through any lower court. They can go right to the SJC, and the SJC begins with a presumption that the record is public, and it's on the burden is on the legislature to justify withholding anything. So that's a powerful avenue for public records disputes.
Yeah, it's interesting too, from my perspective, having seen that SJC hearing. Granted, it was just the one around this particular matter, but the SJC in general, but specific judges within that were very careful in terms of at what point in time they should be able to review. And that was one of their disputes in terms of this is going on long, but there was also the question of whether it was the right process, et cetera, because they're mindful as well of, not going beyond their own bounds in terms of what they can do and when they should do it.
Yep. And this slide here just it shows navigating a records request, what the process is, and we put some caps on. There's for copying, it's a 5 cent per page maximum and a $25 an hour maximum labor rate. The first 4 hours of labor are completely free, and no fees for segregating or redacting. And if somebody has a financial hardship, there are waivers available for those as well. And, this just outlines the dispute resolution and how you would appeal a records denial. And that's set forth in the statute that we passed, H 5469. And that is the end of the slideshow. And let me see if I can stop my share. How we doing? Am I back?
You're back.
All right.
It's still loud and clear.
So that gives you an outline of what we did through 5469. And what I've been telling folks is some folks, not everyone, but some folks have called and said, why did you vote yes to limit the auditor's ability to get documents? And I remind them that the bill that we passed gives the auditor exactly what she wanted, nothing less. And a yes vote was to give the auditor those documents. A no vote would give the auditor absolutely nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So I voted yes to provide her with exactly what she was asking for. Now she takes a different view. I get that. I understand where she's coming from. She is going to lose the limelight if this bill goes through as it is. And she wants to be a governor in the Commonwealth, and this is a great way for her to campaign. But what we want is for her to go and do the audit that she wants to do and tell the people how the legislator is spending their dollars. Do that work. If there's a problem and you uncover things that are missing, tell the Commonwealth of Massachusetts what you couldn't find by doing that audit. Mm-hmm. But please do your job, to quote Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and I think that clarifies a few points, at least from my own understanding as well. Because from what I was understanding, at least, if you will, from the Attorney General's perspective, there were some points in the correspondence. And again, the correspondence goes back and forth for what, over almost 2 years, a year and a half anyway.
In January of 2025 and continued into May of 2026.
Because on the one hand, the auditor or the document from the auditor would say, yes, we will limit this to this. But then if we find something, we're not limited to that. And it's like, well, you just contradicted yourself. Wait a sec. And I think even the Supreme Judicial Court was saying, look, if you do this within the scope and then you find something else, then that's a separate case.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think makes sense. But you can't
absolutely
get carte blanche to do everything because of that separations of duties. So,
and the real point that needs to be made, there's a lot of information that's out there. We have put so much out there. We have an award-winning legislative website that provides robust information. It's one of the best in the nation, and we believe in transparency, and we're trying to give as much information to the public as possible. And we've been doing that for years because we want voters to understand what we do and how their taxpayer dollars are being spent. And I will share with you how, when I was the chair of the Energy Committee, I took it one step further. I had a law school professor from Boston University who got in touch with me. He was very interested in the offshore wind bill that we had done in 2022. And he said, I really want to create a legislative history of that bill. Would you be willing to share with me all of the reports and memoranda and written testimony that you received and notes and things that you considered in putting that bill together? And I said to him, I will do it on one condition. And he said, what is that? I said, I'll do it on the condition that you make that legislative history publicly available to anybody who wants it. Mm-hmm. So he said, that's a deal. And he created a website with all of this information out there. Incredible transparency. Mm-hmm. And the thing that killed me is that no one ever looked at it. But the information's out there. And, that's my view on transparency. I have been accessible as a legislator in my 14 years. I've never backed down from a question. I've never backed down from explaining what goes behind my votes. And I stand behind my votes. And I think that's what people come to expect and out of their legislators. And I try to respect that and believe in transparency and accountability, and would invite anyone to tell me if there's something that they think I can do better. Let me know. Mm-hmm. I'll try to do it.
Yeah, I think the other point to reinforce for our listeners, residents, assuming of Mass, but there may be others as well, is that clearly, at least during that 18 months of correspondence on the one hand, but then also media statements, when it comes time for the court, where now you're creating sworn testimony in the court office, that is the stand, and upon which now this agreement goes forward. Somebody may still be making some public comments that deviate from that, but I mean, people are going to have to recognize that public comments are not necessarily the reality of what was said in the court, the limits, and thereby that's the process going forward. I mean, that's the nature of the beast to a certain extent, being in public service too. But yeah, people have to be aware of that.
And I appreciate the fact that you are running this particular program, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I'm certainly happy if somebody watches this and they still have questions in their mind, please reach out to me. I'm happy to clarify anything that may not have come out clearly through this presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what we opened with in terms of the green grass and different types of audit. Having come through a great learning through my corporate environment, and certainly almost in the 20 years watching town government and dealing with you and Senator Roush, Senator Ross before that, understanding the legislative process, understanding how government works at the multiple levels has been enlightening. And I'm also recognizing, we're still agreeing in some cases or disagreeing in some cases when we should be violently in agreement because we're going the same way, but the words we're using are not necessarily creating the proper image in terms of that commonality. Sure. And hopefully this will help. Hopefully it won't confuse anymore, because to your credit, at least, we now have the doc. We've got the links. People can go and confirm, yes, this is indeed open. This is what's there. The audits were done. This is what the budget looks like. This is what the bills are. This is the transcripts for them. And if they have questions, they can reach out.
Very well said. Thank you.
Well, thank you for preparing that and then taking time to share. And I just hope it makes a dent in some of this, misinformation, and hopefully we'll just continue with a better civil discourse around making our government work better, because, you're working hard enough. You don't need to work harder on some things that really don't make a whole lot of sense. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and it's always good to chat with you.
Well, thank you again. And to the listeners, thank you. If you do have questions, Jeff's info is all over. You can reach out to me. My info is over places. But certainly thank you for participating. Feel free to share. Feel free to reach out. And then a quick reminder, we do this because Franklin matters. We are now producing this in collaboration with Franklin TV and Franklin Public Radio. This podcast is my public service effort for Franklin, but we can't do it alone. We can always use your help. How can you help? If you can use the information that you find here, please tell your friends and neighbors. If you don't like something here, please let me know. Through this feedback loop, we can continue to make improvements. And I thank you for listening. For additional information, please visit franklinmatters.org. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me directly at suresteve@gmail.com. The music for the intro and exit was provided by Michael Clark and the group East of Shirley. The piece is titled Ernesto Mañana, copyright Michael Clark and Tintype Tunes in 2008, and used with their permission. I hope you enjoy. By the way, you can also subscribe and listen to Franklin Matters Radio on your favorite podcast app. Search in podcasts for Franklin Matters.